Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to all our participants in Malaysia and a good morning to our participants in the UK. Hope everyone is keeping safe and well and importantly, managing well during current restrictions and conditions. Thank you for joining us and a warm welcome to the BMCC in Conversation with series with our special guest today, His Excellency Charles Hay, the British High Commissioner to Malaysia. Welcome, His Excellency, and thank you for joining us. With us today also is our BMCC Chairman, Mr. Abrar Anwar, who is the CEO and Managing Director of Standard Chartered Malaysia, an esteemed member of the Chamber. Abrar will be chairing the Q&A session today. Welcome, Abrar. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we start our session, just a little bit of administrative rules. We hope that you will take this opportunity to raise as much questions as possible for His Excellency. Please use the Q&A function that you see on your screens to submit your questions. We will try our best to answer all your questions as much as possible, as much as time permits. But if we can't, His Excellency has kindly said he will try to answer them separately after this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, on 26 June 2016, the UK voted in a referendum to leave the European Union. After much historic happenings, including 2 changes in the Prime Minister and much highlighted discussions, the UK officially exited EU on 31st January 2020 with an 11-month transition period. As some of you may remember, a year ago, before we went all digital, BMCC held an EU exit talk with His Excellency to discuss the status there. 12 months later, now the transition period has ended for nearly a month. Businesses are impacted by a global pandemic, and doing business with Europe has changed. New rules apply on exports, import tariffs, data, hiring, etc. So how has the exit affected UK's global trade outlook in the midst of a global pandemic? How has it impacted UK relationships with other trade partnerships, namely ASEAN in our context? What has been the impact to foreign businesses, I'm sure, like Malaysian businesses exporting into the UK, as well as UK's position of being a gateway into Europe? These are some of the questions among many questions that we may have or it's on our mind. So we hope to get some of answers to these questions during today's session. So hence, without further ado, let us now hear from His Excellency on the updates of the EU exit, UK government's priorities as we start 2021, as well as the current state of UK-Malaysia bilateral trade relations. Your Excellency, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jennifer, and thank you, Abrar. It's a great pleasure to be with you. It's a great list we've got of participants in Malaysia and the UK and elsewhere. So this is a really good opportunity to share some thoughts at the beginning of the year. I had hoped to be able to share some thoughts with some of you at the BMCC New Year's drinks, but this is another casualty of COVID that I very much hope we'll be able to reinstate at some point a bit later in the year. I must apologise, we're going to have to finish a little bit earlier than advertised because I have to go and do a live interview on BBC Radio Scotland about Burns Night, which is of course today. But like every other thing, there are no Burns Nights happening. It's all virtual, and the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office is doing a giant virtual Burns Night. So apologies in advance, but as Jennifer said, I'm happy to take any other questions and deal with them all later. So this is obviously a very significant year in many ways. Jennifer's given us a taste of the history of Brexit. I've been here for nearly 2 years, and I was asked to come a bit earlier in order that I could be here for Brexit. Well, you know, it's finally happened 2 years in as we come to the end of the transition period. You know, we're 4 weeks in nearly, and we're starting to see some of the impacts of the deal that was done shortly before Christmas. So looking forward to hearing people's views about that. Apart from this being the first year of us being fully outside the EU, the UK holds the G7 presidency this year. And we also have the presidency of COP26 Climate Change Conference coming up in November in Glasgow. So I'm going to talk a bit about all of those things. Let me start on the G7. The G7 is a really potentially important forum. I know quite a bit about it personally because I was in charge of the team that led on the G8 summit in Gleneagles back in 2005. And it's the only forum which brings together world leaders, the world's most advanced economies, for really close-knit, face-to-face, fireside chat-like discussions. And I'm sure that this year, as the G7 leaders get together to talk about how we build back from coronavirus, how we unite to make a fairer future, a greener future, a more prosperous future, it'll be the first opportunity for them to meet in person to do that, which they're going to do in Cornwall, I think, in the summer. So this is a really important and critical moment in the world for the UK to be holding the G7 presidency. And the Prime Minister is very ambitious to use the G7 to intensify cooperation between the world's democratic and technologically advanced nations. So in addition to the G7, he's invited leaders from Australia, India, and South Korea to attend as guest countries. So between them, those 10 leaders represent over 60% of the people living in democracies around the world. And as our natural environment reaches a tipping point, we'll also be looking to work with other G7 members to agree further global action on climate change ahead of the COP26 UN climate conference in November. Now, we're working closely with Malaysia on all of these issues. We're working with Malaysia on vaccines and healthcare. We're sharing expertise on climate transition, and we're working closely with Malaysia on plastics and sustainability. And I'm very happy to talk about any of those things in more detail later if people are interested. Perhaps just a few words on climate for the COP26 event. Just before the new year, the UK hosted a so-called Climate Ambition Summit, and that was designed to encourage world leaders to make ambitious commitments on climate. And we did see some very ambitious commitments. So we now have net zero commitments from China, from Japan, from South Korea, that's frankly a huge step forward. Of course, we may not necessarily have all the detail yet as to exactly how they're going to achieve it, but those undertakings are very significant. And also now with the US having rejoined the Paris Agreement, literally within minutes of Joe Biden taking out the presidency, and they also have announced a net zero target. And we also see many other players, such as, for example, Apple, announcing net zero targets. So that looks to be the kind of new normal. This is the way that things are going. The UK, for its part, has announced a green industrial revolution, which is a clear signal of where we want our economy to be growing. We've also announced a 68% cut in carbon emissions by 2030. That's compared to a baseline of 1990. And one of the things that we'll be doing a lot this year is publicizing all of that and also encouraging Malaysia to do more and Malaysia to be more ambitious. And ideally, it would be a fantastic outcome if Malaysia could also commit to a net zero target and ambition. Let me say a few words about prosperity, UK and Malaysia prosperity. Obviously, COVID-19 has hampered us in our efforts. But it has been heartening to see how we've been able to continue working with Malaysia to collaborate on economic development and promoting more and better trade and investment. We're seeing collaboration across a number of different sectors: skills education, health, future smart cities, low carbon energy, Islamic finance and fintech, digital and other economic and regulatory policy. And we're very keen to keep up the momentum on that. I'm really grateful to the BMCC for helping to support us in their work in that. And British ministers and the British government is very keen that we continue on that trajectory. We also have a very active trade envoy, Richard Graham, who some of you may have met. He's been out here, done a number of events. He's very, very keen to get engaged as well and do what he can to support the UK-Malaysia trading partnership, probably from the UK, but maybe with visits as we get through the year. On the health side, we've been working closely with the WHO, and we've been sharing lessons and experiences of joining multilateral initiatives to enhance vaccine development. And the UK and Malaysia are now both active members of the COVAX facility and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation. So Jennifer, you talked about Brexit. Just to recap, as of the 1st of January, the EU trade agreements no longer apply to the UK. Now, insofar as Malaysia is concerned, that has a relatively small impact because, of course, there's never been a trade agreement with the EU. So bilateral trade will continue on the basis that it was continuing before our final departure from the European Union. But of course, there have been some changes, like the introduction of the UK global tariff. So that may well affect those of you who export to the UK from Malaysia. But if you visit the Gov UK website, you'll find a new online tool called Trade with the UK. And that provides information about taxes, about tariffs, about commodity codes, and about regulation. And it also provides information about goods going into Northern Ireland, which of course is a particular case, as you all know. So for those of you that do export, I would encourage you to go and have a look at it. And the same for exporters from the UK to Malaysia. The online tool, Check How to Export Goods, that's also on gov.uk. Now, in those countries where there were EU trade agreements, the UK has sought to reproduce the effects of those agreements to ensure continuity for British businesses. Now, that applied in my last posting, South Korea, where exactly that was achieved. And we've got cases where that's been done also in ASEAN, so Singapore and Vietnam, for example. So as I say, in terms of our trade and investment relationship, our exit from the EU has so far had little or no impact. We, of course, continue to support British business. And just last week, I was at a virtual roundtable meeting between British tech companies and the Minister of Multimedia and Communications, for example. He was very keen to have that roundtable. He's very keen to continue to attract British tech companies into Malaysia. And we're seeing new companies, including SMEs in the edtech sector, continue to break into this market. We are keen to look at ways we can boost trade and investment, including dealing with trade barriers between our countries. So along with the Malaysians, we established a joint committee on bilateral trade and investment cooperation late last year. And that gives us a framework where our two countries can work together at a government level to create the right conditions for our companies to trade with each other. And this year, we'll see 6 working groups examining how we can grow trade in areas such as education, legal services, wines and spirits, halal products, and develop cooperation in areas such as conformity assessment and SME development. Before I finish and move to Q&A, let me just mention a few other things that I think people might be interested in hearing. The big political prize for this year, potentially, is dialogue partnership with ASEAN. As many of you may know, the UK has applied to become a dialogue partner. We were a dialogue partner as part of the EU, and of course, leaving the EU has lost us that. We put in our formal application. It's been pretty favorably received. ASEAN needs to think about how they manage dialogue partner applications, because at the moment there is a moratorium on new dialogue partners. But as far as we can see, that discussion is going on well, and people are very positive about the UK's application. That is one of the big priorities for the UK government as part of the so-called tilt to the Indo-Pacific. And that's all part of the sort of transition as we go through Brexit, and all wrapped up in what we're calling global Britain. So that's very significant, and as I say, a real focus of the government. I think there will be a number of opportunities that will come out of the departure from the European Union. One of them that I think Malaysia is very well placed to benefit from is the successor to the Erasmus educational exchange programme. The UK government decided not to participate in Erasmus on leaving the European Union, but instead to set up a new version called Touring, the Touring programme. And this will be a global set of opportunities. And the idea is that it will enable British students to study globally, not just in European Union countries. And I think Malaysia, with its fantastic educational ties to the UK, should be a natural home for touring students. So I'm looking forward to engaging with people in the education sector to discuss how we might all take that forward. There will be a lot of activity on the security and military side during the course of the year. One of the UK's new aircraft carriers with its group of accompanying ships will be sailing through the Straits of Malacca and coming to this part of the world, the Queen Elizabeth. And I fully expect that we will see the Queen Elizabeth or some of her supporting ships in and around Malaysia. That will be extremely exciting. And that is in a very important year for the defence relationship. The Five Powers Defence Arrangement, which is the only defence arrangement in this part of the world, which brings together Malaysia, Singapore, UK, Australia and New Zealand, is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And there will be a lot of events to mark that later on in the year. So that will be another big focus and a very important recognition of the historical ties that bind those 5 countries in the FPDA. And the Commonwealth continues to be important in our thinking. And we're planning now how we're going to celebrate Commonwealth Day, which is the 8th of March, coming up quite soon. We were hoping to do a face-to-face event, but of course that is no longer possible. So we'll be looking to do a virtual event and using that to promote some of our Commonwealth priorities like clean oceans and forests. So let me stop there because I know there are lots of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency, for that insights. But I will not ask any question. I'll pass it to Abrar. Abrar, may I pass the session to you to take on the conversation further?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Excellency, for your deliberation. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions coming in from the audience who have joined in today. But let me kick off with a trade-related question. Asia has traditionally viewed the UK as an economic gateway to Europe. With the EU exit comes new regulatory barriers for UK-EU trade. Would this negatively impact or weaken the UK's trade links with Asia? And also, if you look at UK's economy, there are a lot of dependence on the supply chain of pan-Europe. Does that also provide an opportunity for Malaysian entities to explore being more integrated with the supply chain of UK?
Yes, well, very good question. Thank you. So I think the way to think of it is that the UK is no longer as effective as it was in being a gateway to the single market, because we, of course, are no longer a part of the European single market. But that doesn't make us any less effective as a gateway to Europe. Having left the common market and the common customs area, that of course has meant a change in the way that people trade between the UK and the EU, and that, you know, I think that was very well understood by a number of different players in the market, but obviously not by all, which is why we're seeing quite a lot of newspaper coverage of people talking about customs forms and so on and so forth, which are a necessary and an inevitable part of being outside the common market. We already have, as I've referred to, significant trade agreements in place in Asia. We do, I didn't mention in my introduction, perhaps I should have done, that one of the things that we are looking to do in due course is to join the CPTPP. That's part of our ambition to expand our footprint and to show how we're prioritizing this part of the world, again, as part of that Indo-Pacific tilt that I talked about. And we're putting a huge amount of effort into strengthening our trade links with the region. I mean, and in Malaysia, the bilateral working group, I think, is an important expression of that. And it's been very encouraging to see how Emcee have been very keen to engage with us. They also are very keen to push down the barriers to trade between our countries. So, you know, we are in a new reality. I think it, you know, is the best way for people to look at it, which brings some opportunities, but also means that people will inevitably have to change the way that they do business. So, for example, if you're an exporter from Malaysia exporting to the European Union, and you currently have a distribution center in the UK, you know, that business model may no longer be appropriate. You may want to do something different for the single market and something different for the UK.
So I mean, just to supplement that answer, how would you advise Malaysian exporters, because there is substantial export going into UK, to be ready for you know, being more effective in the UK market? That can be seen as an opportunity also. I'm sure more opportunities would come because UK is open to import from anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, again, I didn't mention is that as part of our new global tariff table, we have spent quite a lot of time tidying up a lot of the tariffs on goods being exported to the UK. So there were lots of, funny little tariffs that we've taken the opportunity to simplify, which is why it's really important for anybody exporting to the UK to go and have a look, go to the Gov UK website, use the tools, and just familiarize themselves with any changes that are coming or that have come.
One question that we got earlier, thank you, Excellency. As there will be no longer automatic admission of the professionals from Europe coming into UK or UK going into other European countries, do you see that will be an impediment to UK's education system in case there are people, you're coming in from all over Europe to work in UK? Because Malaysia has almost at any point in time 20 to 30,000 students studying there, and it continues. Not only investment in Malaysia, but also a lot of students go there.
Yeah. So one thing that has changed is there is no longer any automatic recognition of UK qualifications to go and work in the European Union. But there is a route for the UK qualifications to be recognised in the EU and vice versa. So that agreement includes a framework. And in that framework, the EU and the UK bring together professional bodies and regulators for mutual recognition of professional qualifications. It's not unlike what we do at the moment with Malaysia. Now, will this, this doesn't affect both sides' right to set fair standards to be met by professionals in order to practice in that jurisdiction, which is something that I think most people are pretty familiar with. Now, will this have an impact on the demand for UK education? Well, in a sense, we'll have to wait and see, but my gut instinct is that it probably won't, because the UK has a very high reputation. The figures, we have, 4 universities in the top 10, 20 in the top 100. I just can't see this having a material impact on the quality of UK education or the demand for UK education. One of the things that will change is that there will no longer be advantageous pricing, if I can put it that way, for EU students to study in the UK. There will be a level playing field for all foreign students studying in the UK from now on. Now, exactly what that will mean for fees and so on, I think, is yet to be seen. The demand is still there. Of course, people thinking about education think years ahead, and that we're not seeing any falling off the demand. And what demand we are seeing falling off, we can trace it to concerns over COVID rather than concerns over the quality and standards of the UK education system. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that, actually.
Thank you. As you know, in our chamber also, we have got 23 UK education institutions at the higher level and also the school level imparting knowledge in Malaysia. So UK continues to play a major role in this sector. Of course, as you know, due to COVID, there had been a bit of strain on these entities because foreign students couldn't come in, and also teachers also got stranded. But nevertheless, recently, government has supported returning students to come in. So that's been a bit of a respite for our members. I'll just take one question that has come in the Q&A box from Tansri Michael Yeo. Excellency Charles, will UK pursue a bilateral FTA with Malaysia as it has with Singapore and Japan and other countries? Are there any impediments to such an FTA?
So thank you, Michael, for your question. Good to see you. Well, good to hear your voice relayed through Abrar. So this is a very interesting question, because we're in a situation that is unique. This has never happened before, that a country has left the European Union and therefore all of a sudden has to deal with the demands for FTAs and agreements of various kinds, essentially with the whole world immediately. And I think the UK has been pretty successful thus far in putting together the negotiating teams really from scratch, because of course, while we were in the European Union, we never negotiated any trade free trade agreement. So we had no people doing that. So we pulled together the teams. We've managed to roll over the existing FTAs. That's just a shorthand for achieving the same results. So the ones that you're referring to, Singapore and Japan, were in a way existing FTAs with the European Union. So what we've done is we've made sure that there's no kind of damage to UK trade in these countries by leaving the European Union, because we've maintained those advantageous trading relationships. Now, as I mentioned, there is no FTA at the moment between Malaysia and the EU. There's a lot of work that needs to be done over the coming months. We're looking at negotiating trade agreements with the US, with New Zealand, with Australia. I think there's just there's a bit of a capacity issue and a prioritization issue. There's no reason why we couldn't have an FTA with Malaysia, but there's a lot we can do to boost trade and investment without an FTA, and that's exactly what we're trying to do through this joint committee that I've referred to.
Thank you. I have two more questions related to travel, so I'll ask them, both coming from the audience here. One from Ben Race. It's regarding the British Airways. What are your thoughts on British Airways terminating its KL to Heathrow route? What can you tell us about the context of this, given that other routes have been just suspended? And is this a sign of deteriorating links between UK and Malaysia? Another one on travel related is from Bill Eddington, also our board member. Why is there no reciprocity between visa-free travel between UK and EU? That is, EU nationals can enter UK for up to 6 months, whereas UK nationals can only enter EU for up to 3 months in each visit. Is this likely to change?
So on British Airways is a commercial company. They take their decisions based on their commercial rationale, commercial decisions. I mean, it's not, the British government is not consulted, and in that sense, it's nothing to do with us. I mean, I'm personally very sorry about it, because I would love to be able to fly home on British Airways. But just sharing that our understanding is that the decisions, and it wasn't just the London to KL route that has been suspended or terminated. There are something like 17, I think, including Seoul and a number of Chinese routes. All the decisions were taken on for commercial reasons. It's nothing to do with the relationship between the UK and Malaysia. And let's hope that as COVID recedes, they will come back to this route again for commercial reasons, because they decide there's money in flying. Because I mean, it's not just about passengers. A big part of it is about freight, and that's the difference, I think, between the route Singapore London route and KL to London route. There's a lot more freight on the Singapore to London route, which makes it much more viable. I think that's probably all I can say about that. And on the visa issue between the UK and the EU, I mean, this is so far above my pay grade, I can't even see it, frankly. All these things will be worked out, at a very, very political level. So I can't really give any guidance or advice at all, or insight. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. There's one question from Luke Joseph, the country head of British Petroleum. Excellency Charles, can you please share more details in how the UK intends to partner with Malaysia to elevate the importance of climate change and net zero ambitions? Will this be in the form of sharing expertise, etc.?
Yes, so there's a lot to talk about, because we're having a lot of engagement with the Malaysian government, a lot of discussions. I've met the environment minister, we've had ministerial contacts. So where to start? So we are providing what support we can to the Malaysian government on a number of areas, like, for example, technical issues and support as they draw up their NDC, which is the national plan. And I referred to the net zero commitments from various nations. Those were contained, generally speaking, in the national plans. And we were trying to encourage all countries to produce their national plans by the end of last year. which is a bit ahead of the timescale that had originally been envisaged. Malaysia has not yet produced its national plan, so we don't know what's going to be in it. They're working on that alongside their work on the next Malaysia plan overall. We've had a lot of discussions with the Ministry of Finance on what we can do to support them as they look towards green finance for the economy, and they have a lot of ambition there. We have a program called PACT, Partnership for Accelerating Climate Transition. That brings about £2.5 million worth of funding for all sorts of different projects which are intended to achieve a low carbon growth trajectory in a number of areas, including skills and expertise transfer. We put out a call for bids. We had a huge amount of interest, and we're now going through the process of going through all those bids and allocating amounts. So we're working very closely with the Malaysians. I think, they wouldn't mind me saying too much that the political events in this country over the past few months have made it hard for them to be as on track as they would like in terms of producing their plans. But we are hopeful that when the plans come out, that they will be ambitious and appropriate for what we all need to achieve at the COP at the end of this year.
Yeah, and thank you for attending our recent Green Finance Conference initiated by BMCC, and over there we have also heard from YB Finance Minister the commitment towards the green economy, and also as a representing the bank, there is a joint committee on climate change that's initiated with Bank Negara as well as Securities Commission. So there are some initiatives in that direction, and to bring all the actors in some sort of level playing field. So we also look forward to seeing that more development happens in the zero emission targets and so on and so forth. So of course the financial sector needs to play an important role in this area. Next, I'll take combining basically two questions. Similar questions from Ben Race from Wilbury Stratton and John Arkinstall from +3 Consultants on the availability of vaccine for British nationals and expats in Malaysia. The question is whether the British government has any plans to vaccinate British nationals in Malaysia during 2021, or any information that High Commission has on the vaccination for British expats in Malaysia. There's a key hot topic now, vaccination. Who gets when?
Absolutely. So this is one sort of bright area for the UK. I think we've now vaccinated some 5.5 million people in the UK, and that program is heading on at pace. And obviously in the UK, as in every other country, we're doing it according to needs and vulnerability. So starting out with the over 80s, care homes, frontline health workers, etc., etc. And that vaccination program in the UK is not nationality based. It is based on needs. So if you're an over 80-year-old Malaysian living in the UK, you will get vaccinated in the same way as an over 80 Brit or Pole or American or anyone else living in the UK. That is the model that the UK is working on. We don't yet know what model the Malaysian government is working on. I very much hope they will do something similar. So Brits will be vaccinated in Malaysia alongside Malaysians and every other non-Malaysian in accordance with need and vaccine availability. As I say, we don't yet know what the Malaysian government's plans are. We're waiting to see. So at the moment, there is no plans for the UK government to provide vaccine for people out with for British nationals out with the UK.
Thank you. As you know, the palm oil, let's shift our gear towards palm oil. As you know, palm oil is a major export item for Malaysia, and it really contributes to the overall economy. There's a question in this context from Joanne Nobel. Now that Malaysia has taken its trade dispute with EU over palm oil to the WTO, what are the UK government's views on the dispute, and will the UK distance itself from the EU stance on palm oil now it is no longer part of EU?
Well, thanks very much for the question, Joan, and good to see you back in Malaysia after a long time away. Palm oil is it's extremely important for the Malaysian economy, of course, we know that, and British ministers and government understand that. There are a number of things going on palm oil. One is some work the British government has been leading on sustainability of supply chains, and the aim of that piece of work is to ensure that goods that are sold in the UK market that are forest-related products do not bring about deforestation as part of their production. So it's not just palm oil, it's also soy, leather, beef, cocoa, you name it. And there was a consultation process that took place towards the end of last year. We actively engaged the Malaysian government on this. And where we're coming out in terms of our model is a legality-based model. Therefore, if a product is produced in accordance with the law of the country, then that, in a way, is the safeguard against deforestation in the supply chain. And the Malaysian government seemed to be very happy about that approach. Now, what you're referring to, though, is something slightly different. That was to do with the use of palm oil in biofuels. The UK was always in a different place from a number of our EU partners on this, in the sense that we have never encouraged the use of virgin oils in biofuel. In our view, the aim of using biofuel is to reduce climate change, to reduce carbon emissions. And using virgin oil is not the best way of achieving that. A much better way is to use waste products, which could, of course, include waste products from palm oil production. The UK government will be looking to transpose its legislation now that we've left the European Union and are after the transition period. But I've seen no suggestion that basic stance of not incentivizing the use of any virgin oil, whether it's palm oil or any other kind of oil, is going to change.
Thank you. So we need to watch this space as the RSPO and all these things gets into the system. And of course, there is commitment from Malaysia government also to bring sustainable palm oil. So I'll go to the next question. It's coming from Kojila Balakrishnan from University of Warwick. Do you see businesses between Malaysia and UK being impacted by the announcement of emergency? For example, the inflow of FDI and commitment to new businesses. It's coming in from a lot of our members considering the emergency and suspension of Parliament. How does that impact FDI and the confidence in the policy of the country from your perspective?
Well, you know, it's a very good question, and it's one that we are monitoring carefully, but we're monitoring it by really talking to the likes of all of you. So far, what we're hearing, and I'd be interested if anybody disagrees with this and has other concerns, is that, of course, people are aware of it, and they are aware of the fact that you know, there is now the possibility for abuse of the state of emergency. Let's put it like that. That possibility is out there, and people are watching to see how things develop. But as far as we can see, this is not translated into any concerns about the stability of Malaysia or any concerns about the future direction. You know, it's definitely one that we should all watch and see, but I don't think it undermines the basic opportunities and the attractions of the Malaysian marketplace for British business.
Okay, thank you. There's one question from FMM member. Would there be possible flexibility in reduction in the cost of test certification for Malaysian companies on UKCA application?
So I'm not entirely sure I fully understand the question. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, I'm also the question. So maybe maybe Jennifer, you'd like to help us here.
Correct me. We can ask the FMM member who's joining us. Thank you for joining us. But I think it's regards to certifications to export into UK, Charles, on UKCA. some accreditation. So they're asking, will there be, because of the pandemic, will there be extension from 1st January 2022? I'm not familiar with what is the requirement. Perhaps we could, if you're not familiar, we could go back to them later on these questions.
Yes, perhaps they could write to us and we can reply fully and accurately rather than me make something up.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah.
There's one question from the education sector from Andrew Dalton. As you have already mentioned, there are very strong links in education with Malaysia, which directly and indirectly has a considerable impact on the Malaysian economy. Is the Education is Great campaign still active, and are there plans for it to be further developed?
It's still very much active, and the British government has been very clear that we want to enhance and increase the number of overseas students coming to study in the UK after our departure from the European Union. So yes, absolutely. And we are looking in particular in some areas where we might be able to do more, such as in TVET. But we're always open to ideas and suggestions from the education sector as to where we can take this. So again, I would encourage people to write in and let us know and to be in touch. It is a growth area. It's a really important area, and it's one where we see increasing opportunities, including, as I mentioned, this Turing program.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the time, supplemental to that education question is one question from Ching Yifu. What are the immediate upsides for UK might see in international students going into UK? And also, I'll also give you the last question. It's from Nicholas Chu. What are the 3 key industries that the UK is keen to further in Malaysia in the immediate and medium term?
Yeah, so I think the ones we want to further, I would highlight the tech sector. I think this is a very exciting growth area. It's one where the Malaysian government is very keen to partner with us. I think Malaysia is very attractive as an investment destination for UK tech. There's an excellent, well-educated workforce. The costs are relatively moderate. And we're seeing a lot of interest, as I say, in the tech sector, and we want to continue with that. Education, of course, you talked about, extremely important at every level, and we definitely want to continue there. And professional services, which I haven't really talked about, but Nicholas, you may not be surprised that I'm going to say that legal services is one in particular where we're very keen to increase market access for UK firms, foreign legal services, but also services across the board. I mean, when I'm having conversations with Malaysian ministers, very often what I'm trying to get from them is more possibility of participation from UK consultancies, UK professional associations and professional firms, and that is another definite area where we've got much more to offer.
Thank you very much for your time, Excellency. There are a lot of questions coming in, which we will, from the chamber, supply to you in case we could not get around to ask those questions. And also the people who have joined, I would like to thank you for spending your time. And in case there are any needs that you would like to access the chamber, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be most delighted to help out as the things keeps on changing in this scenario that we all have looked around. So may I hand over back to Jennifer to wrap up, and once again, thank you, Excellency, for your time. Jennifer, you're on mute.
Jennifer.
Sorry about that. Never. Thank you, Abrar, for the excellent moderation. And Charles, thank you so much for your time. I know you're rushing off. And thank you for answering all the questions. I think this is one of the sessions that we had a lot of questions. So if there are any questions, we will pass it on to your office and hope we can get an answer. And with that, we thank everyone for attending. Just like to add, on climate change and some of the issues that His Excellency highlighted, we are setting up interest groups to get a feedback from members so that we know we are doing the right thing for you members. Please look out for our communications, our newsletter today. There's a call for interest groups. We want to hear members' feedback so that we are able to deliver the right service propositions to you. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. Stay connected to our social media platforms and have a good evening. Thank you. Thank you, His
Thank you.
Excellency.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much
you,
indeed.
everyone.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Abrar. Thanks, everyone.